Your Town Matters is funded by the Government of Canada through the Local Journalism Initiative and supported by Cactus Media, Canada's independent community television association.
Hello, I'm Vicki Hogarth and welcome to Your Town Matters, where we ask your Southwest New Brunswick community leaders questions submitted by the public. My guest today is the Mayor of St. Andrews, Doug Naish. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for inviting me. Appreciate it very much.
I'm excited to have you and talk a lot about 2019 highlights as well as what the plans are for 2020.
We had a very good year last year from a budget point of view, and we had that good year mostly because our senior staff were doing double duty for most of the year, which we've now resolved by the recruitment of new senior staff or additional senior staff. But as a result of their diligence in managing the budget last year, with a bit of help from council, of course, we ended up with a surplus of about $450,000 at the end of the year. And without getting into all the details that's in the budget, you can look at it. It's available to the public. It was passed in January, and but that's a great thing. And what that does is it allows us to continue on this council's program of trying to increase our capital reserves so that we'll have a nest egg so that we can get into partnerships, hopefully with other levels of government, for doing major infrastructure programs and projects that we need to do in the town.
Right.
So that's really the highlight, is that we've managed to accumulate some savings, if you like, if you're putting it in a personal context.
What would you say are some of the highlights for the municipal plan for 2020?
Well, we're going forward again. And one thing I do want to specify, because it took a little while this year because of all of the things we had on our plate to get the budget passed. We would have liked to have passed it before Christmas, and we probably would have done more publicity at that time. But we had about a dozen public budget meetings that people could have attended. The budget's now available, so it didn't get passed until January. So probably some of this communication didn't get out there. But the good news is we've been following our 5-year budget plan that we put in place about 3 years ago. And last year, our tax base, which is a very important factor in our town, our tax base went up another 2.8%. Over the past 4 years, our tax base has gone up very close to 10%, which is extraordinary for a small town. What that means is that we have that much more access to taxes, and it's causing us to have a very moderate increase in mill rates. This year we raised the mill rate 2 cents, so it's obviously noticeable, and I know people, but if you don't do that, we fall behind. And I think what this council realized when we came into power in 2016 is that there had been many years, without being critical, many years when the economy was not as good as it should have been. You can remember the days when the Algonquin Hotel was closed completely. Therefore, there wasn't the kind of economic activity that we were able to experience in 2016 going forward. Not trying to take credit for that, but we just hit it at the right time when the economy was going ahead again. And to take advantage of that, we decided that a slow, measured increase in mill rate combined with hopefully an increase in tax base was going to get us to the point where we would be able to be more self-sufficient in terms of how we budget.
What are some of the major projects on the horizon for the town? I know the medical center has just gone underway. Yeah,
exactly. I would say right now, from a completion point of view, the wellness center has been outstanding. And again, the reason we're able to do that was the generous donation the Dunn Foundation. The Dunn Foundation has been supporting this community for many years and continues to do so. So we, it was a bit of a process to get people all on side, to have everyone wanted a new wellness center, but it took a while to figure out what the best approach was. And finally, it became very obvious after lots and lots of consultation that the only thing that made sense was to make use of the infrastructure that we already had here that was not being used. And so now we've been able to completely demolish the inside of what was the bowling alley and then was the call center. Both of those things have gone by the boards, and now we have an excellent space to be made into a wellness center. And on top of that, at the 11th hour, Council figured out a way to be able to replace the location of the current Visitor Information Center and create a fitness center that works hand in hand with the wellness center. And again, the fitness center idea was something that really came out of the Age-Appropriate Community Steering Committee. That was their number one recommendation, that we needed for all ages, we needed a fitness center in town. And we're going to have one, and probably in place by this year sometime. The wellness center is all designed. I got to do my little publicity thing here. There's a picture of the wellness center. On the outside, and this isn't something that's been widely circulated, but this has gone out to tender now to do the refurbishing inside, and hopefully the tenders will be back by the end of this month. They're due back, and hopefully we might have construction happening by the end of March or early April, and hopefully for occupancy in the middle of the summer. So yeah. And with the fitness center, another important thing, as we've discussed, that will go out to a request for proposals to see who would want to create and own and run, and we would our contribution as a town would be some assistance with overhead and whatnot, because it's going to be within our a town-owned building sort of thing. So that should allow an operator, we hope, to provide the service at a rate that's reasonable to the public.
Will the medical center have any new features or more doctors or nurse practitioners? Everyone
that's currently practicing in our current health center will be moved over. Not moved over, that sounded terrible. They want to move over. In other words, they've all been consulted in the design. Everyone seems quite happy with it. It's quite modern, it's quite sleek. But we will have space there as we do now, but we'll have hopefully a full-time nurse practitioner. We have a part-time nurse practitioner now. That's part of our negotiations with Horizon Health, and they've been very positive as well and very helpful in this, given that the town will own the wellness center. But everyone who's practicing there now will be practicing there. There'll be better facilities for everyone, more space, and certainly the physiotherapists who practice there now in our current health center will be moved over. They will have better space, and their space will be connected to the fitness center, so they will be able to make maximum use out of the fitness, provided that their clients buy memberships. They'll be able to supervise their clients at the fitness center, which will be another bonus.
Mm-hmm. Is a new visitor center location, I know it's yet to be unveiled, is that something that will be on the horizon soon?
Yeah, it will be. We are now currently negotiating, and as of this week it looks very clear now that the St. Andrews Chamber of Commerce will be playing a major role in operating the visitor information process, whether it's bricks and mortar, whether it's part bricks and mortar and some other technological ways of communicating to visitors. That's going to be worked out in the next little while. Of course, we have to get it worked out before May when we start getting visitors. So that's a top priority for Council before the end of the term.
And speaking of visitors, there's a new mandatory accommodations levy coming into effect, tentatively April 1st, I understand.
That's correct.
How is that going to work, and what do you see the benefits of that being?
Actually, this is a tremendous move forward, and it's something that we certainly have to give the provincial government credit for at least 10 years and probably more before my time here in the community. There's been lobbying going on to try to make that a provincial accommodation levy, and that is in place almost all over the world, as you probably know if you've done any traveling. But this year, or last year, at least at the end of last year, the provincial government decided to make it a municipal responsibility. And I'm sure there were some people who said, well, that's downloading responsibility. But in fact, I welcome that, because it really means that we can tailor that to our own community. So we're in the process now of going forward with a bylaw, an accommodation levy bylaw, that has had first reading, and we're working through the details of it. And what will happen in a nutshell is that there'll be 3% added to every short-term accommodation charge in St. Andrews. The accommodation levy will apply to all short-term accommodation, with the exception of student accommodation, and by that I mean things like the Huntsman Center, where they bring in groups of high school kids and elementary school kids from all over the all over the province and all over the country, really. And we won't be charging them an accommodation levy, but that's pretty much the only exception. So
then Airbnb and the campground would be included in that.
Absolutely. Everybody pays. And the distinction to be made, we've been working very diligently with accommodation providers, because of course they're the ones that have to help us collect the money. And in return, what happens is that amount of money, the determination has been made that 2/3 of it will be allocated for tourism promotion, and the other 1/3 will be allocated for tourism development, which are the two things that the provincial legislation allows us to spend money on. The important thing is that once that money is collected by the town, and the town will manage the money in the sense that we will be accountable for it. It's part of our budget. And therefore we have to account not only for collecting it, but for expending it. And so, but it looks very much now that based on recent conversations, that the Chamber of Commerce will play the major role in the tourism promotion part of it, which includes the VIC, and therefore they will get 2/3 of the money, and 1/3 will be reserved for council to spend on tourism development, which could include, we haven't got a full list, we're actually working our way through some definitions so that we will be able to tell the public that this is what it's going to be spent on. And so we're not quite there yet, but we will be for April 1. And it's a significant amount of money that's not there now. There has been a voluntary levy that was collected by some facilities and used for regional tourism promotion, but this is going to be a significant amount of money the way it's going to be applied. So it could be anywhere between, the estimates made by the Chamber of Commerce are that it's anywhere between $300,000 and $500,000 a year that we will have available to support tourism in our town. Because again, the levy only applies to the town because it's a municipal bylaw.
Okay. As far as Airbnb goes, and speaking of that, that some people say that's impacted the housing crisis in town. What ways going forward are we looking for housing opportunities for students, for instance?
Yep. I think that I can certainly thank you for that, because I think that's a very important thing. In the new municipal plan, meaning the municipal plan that's currently being drafted and passed through the process, not quite there yet as well, but hopefully will be by the end of the term of this council, the 2020 plan, probably the most outstanding change in that bylaw over the last 10 years is the emphasis now on housing. Not only for students, not only for summer staff who are here, and the difficulties that some employers have had finding staff in the summertime for the busier tourist season, but also for people who have had difficulties in finding appropriate and affordable apartments and other levels of housing. So a lot of it's going to be focused on apartment, or not necessarily apartments, but temporary rental accommodation. But we also need to start looking at, there was an era where everybody wanted, you know, a single family home with a big yard, and that seems to be less and less of an issue for most people that we hear from who might want to live here. So I think we need to start looking at other forms of housing, you know, garden homes, row houses. I know we the step forward in 2017 with the opening of Anchor's Landing and creating 36 seniors apartments was a big step forward. But in that case, what's ended up happening is that many of those people were local people who wished to move into an apartment. They sold their existing housing here, and new people moved in, and that's part of the reason why our tax base went up in that period of time. The apartment building itself was a big increase in tax base, and then we had people coming to town, buying up second used housing, if I don't know if that's the right term, but housing, recycled housing, and then fixing up those houses in many cases. So they were spending money on improvements, and therefore the tax base went up. So housing is of fundamental importance. I know I've had discussions with Jeff Dempsey, who is the regional director at the NBCC. It's a huge issue for them. They ran into a bit of difficulty this past fall because they recruited so many international students to come here that they were struggling a little bit, and thankfully the community stepped up to the plate, and many people took in students, and it's turned out to be a good experience. But it just tells us that we need to plan for that kind of housing. And of course, the NBCC is one of our main employers in this town, and one of the important things that makes our town different. There aren't very many towns anywhere in the world of 2,000 people that have a community college, right? True. And so it's something that we need to work on. And they are working on that, trying to look at maybe even working with a developer to construct student housing.
Right. And one of the things that makes our town different too is that we have a gated saltwater cove.
Right.
Before this interview, I asked viewers to write in their questions for you, and one viewer wanted to know how the town plans to collaborate with the new Katie's Cove Incorporated group that's trying to rejuvenate the cove.
Yeah, actually, we're working through that process. It's a little bit difficult for council because we really aren't part of any of the agreements. That was sort of a private initiative that came forward from a newly formed nonprofit group, and that's great. There's not a problem with that from my point of view or from council's point of view, but we're trying to figure out the legalities of it and what council can spend taxpayers' money on and what it ought not to spend taxpayers' money on. So over the years, and of course the Katie's Cove Inc. has a lease with the owners of the property, but those owners are private owners, and they really there's a bit of a difficulty in my mind on spending taxpayer money on creating infrastructure on property that doesn't belong to the town. No problem recreating the wellness center here at the arena because we're always going to own it and we'll always be responsible for it, which is the way it should be. And I'm not saying we can't work something out or we shouldn't, and we are working our way through that with Katie's Cove Inc. As we go along. So stay tuned. We'll work out what we can, but certainly there will be, as we've always done there, even when it was owned directly and run by the Algonquin, we'll be providing some services in kind this year, and we'll take care of the garbage, we'll take care of the washrooms, things of that nature. But the permanent type stuff, we still have to work. We've got a lot of discussions that have to take place on that.
Speaking of garbage removal, the new recycling program that was launched about 1.5 years ago.
Right.
Are you finding that's working better than the drop-off service before? That was another question sent in from viewers.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There still are issues, and there are issues at the Regional Service Commission. Some people aren't 100% sold on it because it's quite a complex undertaking in terms of whether or not you're actually saving the planet by recycling or you're not, if you're driving trucks all over the place to do it, sort of thing. But I certainly believe myself that it's been a tremendous improvement for a couple of reasons. One is that if you make it convenient for people, they will do it. If you don't make it convenient for people, they won't. That's a simple principle. Back when we had the blue bins behind the arena here, only 3 things were being recycled. Now about 10 things are being recycled, so much more is going into recycling. Recycling doesn't weigh very much, but we're still saving about 10% on tipping fees. In other words, when garbage is picked up at your house, it's weighed when it goes into the landfill, and we pay a fee per ton for that, and we still save 10%. But the more important thing from a regional point of view is that recycling, plastic in particular, takes up a lot of space in the landfill. So by the cubic coverage is much more important than the weight with recycling. And so we're saving money on tonnage, but we're also saving a lot of space in the landfill, which means down the road we don't have to build as much infrastructure at the landfill to deal with garbage if in fact we're not mixing in all of these things that could be recycled. And so I think overall there has been a saving, maybe not as dramatic as some people wished, but at the same time it's still going in the right direction. And we are still trucking that to recycling to Rivière-du-Loup, Quebec, and they're managing that recycling and getting whatever benefit they get from it, and our only cost now is the cost of trucking it, and that's far less than what the cost was of maintaining the blue bins and sending trucks from the landfill to pick up, dump the blue bins and take them back to the landfill. And in many cases we were holding on to recycling at the landfill. We had a huge building full of recycling, and we had to keep it there until someone wanted to buy it back in industry to recycle it, right? So we don't have to do that anymore. When we have a truckload, we fill up a truck and we send it to Rivière-du-Loup, and they take care of that problem.
You sit on the board at the Southwest Service Commission.
Yeah.
What are some of the things on the horizon in terms of regional services?
Actually, we've come a long way in the last 3 years. We now have a very high functioning regional service commission, which I understand was not always the case in the beginning because it was new and there were some problems that had to be worked out. But it's all come together, and we now have a really good group of people who want to collaborate and work together in order to get things done that you wouldn't be able to do on your own. I mean, we're starting to talk about more and more things. One of the spin-off discussions that we've been having just recently is about, we're really desirous of having better fire service equipment. We do need to have a ladder truck or a platform truck, which we don't have in the region any longer. And the best way to get that is for us to all pull together and buy one, because we can't buy one, well, we could, but a ladder truck costs $1.5 million, and people don't realize how expensive the equipment is. But you don't need one every day, you just need to have one available to you, and a partnership with other areas seems to be the right way to go. That's one thing. The coastal trail network that's going through from St. Stephen all the way through to Fundy Park, we're now managing that section from the Regional Service Commission. The province gave the Coastal Trail Inc. $1 million, and we're helping them. We're managing that money and working with them. And our regional recreation implementer is their key staff person from the region to assist that board to go forward. And they'll be building 3 sections of that trail in St. Stephen this year. And the Regional Service Commission will be helping them to manage that implementation.
One of, dare I say, the most polarizing issues in St. Andrews is the deer population and how to manage it. Can you tell me a little bit about your plans going forward to deal with the deer?
Sure. Yeah, actually, when I became mayor, I didn't know anything about deer, and now I know more than I ever wanted to know. But having said that, though, I'm still not an expert. But where we're at right at the moment, it's been a bit of a frustrating thing for everyone I know, and I don't mean to make light of it because it's a very serious problem on many levels. But it's a difficult problem because even me being frustrated about having to manage deer when it's not my problem, or shouldn't be my problem as a mayor, it's still, deer are magnificent animals, and I sometimes feel badly for us, but I also feel badly for them because the fact that they're inconvenient doesn't mean that we should be doing any harm to them. And so I truly believe that we should be relocating the deer that can't be hunted in the nuisance program. And right now, the Union of New Brunswick Municipalities, as of last October, I brought a resolution to the floor of the annual general meeting of the Union in Fredericton last October, and that was passed. And the recommendation was, or the resolution said, that the Union of Municipalities should prevail upon the provincial government to institute a deer relocation program for any urban area like ours that needed to have deer moved to another place than where they were, so, and where they couldn't be hunted, in the unhuntable areas. So most of the deer and most of the problem is in the town plat. and we have no easy way to deal with that problem other than to adapt ourselves to the behavior of the deer. And in my view, and based on my research and what I've been told, that living there might seem good for the deer, but in the long term it's not healthy for the deer either. That's not their natural environment, and in fact they may not even be getting the right nutrition there. Even if they're eating all of our gardens, it's not the right thing that they should be eating. And so we've taken some steps. Deputy Mayor Henderson has been very involved in this at my request, done an excellent job, not only dealing with the nuisance hunting program in those areas where we can hunt, but also he and I did a field trip to a place called the Acadia Research Forest, which is a federal forestry reserve between Fredericton and Minto. 22,000 hectares of, unharvested timber where the conditions for deer are absolutely perfect. And so we're trying to work now with the director there, who is interested in creating a laboratory type situation to perhaps relocate some deer. And I am going to, as a result of my ongoing discussions with the Union of Municipalities, I'll be making an overture to the Irving Corporation, because they have deer biologists, they study deer, that's all part of their forestry practices process, and I'm hoping that maybe they might want to become part of the solution here.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. We didn't touch on nearly half of what I wanted to talk to you about, so hopefully you'll be back soon.
Another time, that would be great, and I think this is an excellent idea, and I think you'll find that I hope, and I'm sure you will find, that the other mayors in the region that I interact with regularly at the Regional Service Commission will also take advantage of this opportunity.
We're very excited to bring it to our viewers at home.
Thank you.